A prince stands alone in his chamber, holding a cup that glows with an eerie green light. His hands are steady. His eyes burn with absolute certainty. He believes this moment will transform him into something greater, something beyond human, something divine. He raises the cup to his lips. The screams that follow echo through the Red Keep for what feels like an eternity. This is the story of Aerion Targaryen, a man who believed so deeply in his own exceptionalism that he drank wildfire, convinced it would turn him into a dragon. But this isn't just a tale of madness. It's the story of how cruelty, privilege, and delusion intertwined to create one of the most horrifying deaths in Westerosi history. A prince who tortured his way through childhood, who believed Targaryens were gods among men, who saw fire not as death but as transformation. Tonight we journey into the dark heart of House Targaryen, where the line between greatness and madness is thinner than a blade's edge. We'll witness a boy's descent from privileged prince to monster, from monster to madman, and finally to a corpse burned from the inside out by his own hand. Every act of cruelty, every twisted belief, every step that led him to that glowing cup. The question isn't just why he did it. The question is, what kind of world creates a man who believes drinking fire will make him a god? So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, get comfortable under your blanket, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins in the final years of King Daeron II's reign, around the year 191 after conquest. The Red Keep towers over King's Landing, its red stone walls housing the most powerful family in the known world. House Targaryen sits at the peak of its cultural influence. The dragons may be gone, extinct for nearly a century, but their legacy burns bright in the silver hair and purple eyes of the royal family. The realm is stable, mostly. The first Blackfire rebellion has been crushed, though whispers of another uprising simmer in the shadows. The dance of the dragons is memory now, a cautionary tale about what happens when Targaryens turn on each other. But beneath the surface, something darker brews in the bloodline, a taint, some call it. The madness that seems to strike Targaryens as often as greatness does. Into this world is born Aerion Targaryen, fourth son of Prince Maekar. From his first breath, he is surrounded by luxury, privilege, and the weight of dragon blood. His father Maekar is a stern and martial man, a prince known for his discipline and military prowess. His mother Diana Dane brings the ancient blood of House Dane into the union. Aerion has three brothers, Daryon the eldest, who will earn the bitter nickname the Drunkard. Aemon, who will become one of the wisest meisters the Citadel has ever produced. And young Aegon, barely more than a child who everyone calls Egg, who will one day become King Aegon V. But Aerion is different from his brothers. Where Daeron drowns his disappointments in wine, Aerion drowns his in cruelty. Where Aerion seeks wisdom in books, Aerion seeks power in pain. Where little Aegon shows kindness and curiosity, Aerion shows only contempt. He is beautiful in the way all Targaryens are beautiful. Silver gold hair that catches the light like molten metal, eyes the color of amethysts, purple and deep. Features so perfect they seem almost unreal, as if carved by a master sculptor. Servants whisper that he looks like the dragons of old must have looked in human form, and perhaps that is the problem. Because Aerion Targaryen does not see himself as human. From his earliest days, he believes that Targaryens are something more, something beyond the laws and morality that bind common men. He believes that dragon blood flowing through his veins makes him not just noble but divine, not just royal but godlike. And when a sadist believes he is beyond human law, when cruelty meets absolute conviction, when entitlement is reinforced by everyone around you, something monstrous takes shape. The question that will haunt the rest of his life, and the realm itself, is simple and terrifying. What happens when you give unlimited power to someone who believes he is a god? The first signs appear when Aerion is barely old enough to walk. A kitchen cat goes missing from the Red Keep. 3 days later, a servant finds it in the Godswood, burned beyond recognition. The Meisters tell Prince Maiska it was likely an accident. Perhaps the cat wandered too close to a torch. But the servants know better. They've seen the young prince watching flames with an intensity that chills them to the bone. By the time Aerion reaches his 7th named day, the incidents multiply. Small animals disappear from the castle grounds. Birds with broken wings appear on windowsills. A stable boy reports finding his favorite hound with burns across its back, whimpering in pain. When questioned, young Aerion simply stares at his father with those purple eyes and says nothing. What can Maka do? Punish his son for crimes with no witnesses? Beat a prince based on servants' whispers? The other children learn quickly to avoid him. His older brother Darren already shows signs of his future drinking problem, perhaps seeking escape from a family that demands perfection. Anemon, studious and thoughtful even as a child, tries to reach Aerion through reason and books. He fails. Aerion has no interest in wisdom or philosophy. He wants only to understand power, to feel it, to wield it. But it's young Aegon who suffers most under Aerion's attention. Egg is just a small boy, curious and kind, the sort of child who makes friends with servants and asks endless questions about how things work. This kindness infuriates Aerion. He sees it as weakness, as a betrayal of what Targaryens should be. One afternoon in the practice yard, Aerion corners his youngest brother away from watching eyes. He produces a small piece of hot coal from a brazier, holding it with a thick cloth. He tells Egg that true Targaryens cannot be burned, that their dragon blood protects them. He moves the coal closer to Egg's hand, close enough that the boy can feel the heat radiating from it. Egg is terrified, tears streaming down his face, but he doesn't scream. Perhaps even then, he knows that screaming will only make it worse. A guard intervenes just in time, pulling Aerion away. The incident is reported to Maka, who confines Aerion to his chambers for a week. It changes nothing. The psychological torment continues, perhaps even intensifies, because now Aerion is more careful. He learns to hurt in ways that leave no marks, to terrorize in moments when no adults are present. He whispers to Egg about all the ways dragons killed their enemies in the old stories. He describes burnings in vivid detail, watches his little brother's face go pale, and smiles. The court doesn't know what to do with him. He is a prince, 4th in line to the Iron Throne, but 4th is still close enough to matter. His father is Prince Makar, one of the most formidable warriors in the realm. His grandfather is the king. You cannot simply lock away a boy with that much royal blood, no matter how disturbing his behavior becomes. The Meisters try their hand at counseling. They speak to young Aerion about compassion, about the duties of nobility, about the difference between strength and cruelty. He listens with apparent attention, asks intelligent questions, and seems to understand. Then the very next day, another animal goes missing. He is learning something from these sessions, but it's not what the Meisters intend. He's learning how to appear normal, how to say the right words, how to make adults believe he's improving. It's a mask he'll wear when necessary for the rest of his life, slipping it on and off as easily as a cloak. The Septons have no better luck. They preach about the Seven, about the father's justice and the mother's mercy. Targaryen sits through their sermons with a look of polite interest, but privately, he's developing his own theology. He reads about old Valyria, about the dragon lords who ruled from the freehold before the Doom. These were people who rode dragons, who commanded fire, who considered themselves living gods. That resonates with him in a way the faith of the Seven never could. He devours every text about dragons he can find in the Red Keep's library. He reads about Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, about how they bent the Seven Kingdoms to their will with fire and blood. He reads about the dance of the dragons, but he doesn't see it as a tragedy of civil war. He sees it as proof that Targaryens are beyond normal human concerns, that their conflicts play out on a scale ordinary people cannot comprehend. Then comes the incident that will echo through history, the moment when the court can no longer pretend Aerion is just a troubled child who will grow out of it. A traveling puppeteer arrives at King's Landing, a man who makes his living performing in the courts of great lords. He's been invited to entertain the royal family, and he's prepared a show about Targaryen history. It's meant to be light-hearted, educational, a way to teach younger children about their heritage through colorful puppets and simple stories. The performance begins well enough. The puppeteer shows Aegon's conquest, complete with dragon puppets breathing red silk flames. The children laugh and clap. Even serious Prince Maekar seems amused. But then the puppeteer makes a fatal mistake. In trying to be entertaining, he portrays one of the Targaryen dragons as somewhat foolish, making it trip over its own tail while the other puppets laugh. Aerion goes rigid in his seat. His hands grip the armrest so tightly his knuckles turn white. The other children don't notice, still caught up in the show, but those sitting near him see his face transform, see something cold and terrible come into his eyes. The moment the performance ends, Aerion stands and walks calmly toward the puppeteer. The man is bowing, accepting applause, pleased with how well his show was received. He doesn't see Aerion coming until it's too late. The beating is savage and sudden. Andrion's fists rain down on the puppeteer's face, his chest, anywhere he can reach. The man tries to defend himself, but he's an entertainer, not a fighter, and Aerion is a prince trained in combat since childhood. Blood sprays across the colorful puppets. Children scream. Guards rush forward but hesitate. Can you really manhandle a prince to stop him from attacking a commoner? It's Maekar himself who finally pulls Aerion off, lifting his son bodily and holding him back while the puppeteer lies groaning on the floor. And even then, even held in his father's iron grip, Aerion keeps shouting. He calls the man a traitor for mocking dragons. He says the puppeteer deserves to burn for his insult. He struggles to break free and finish what he started. The puppeteer survives, but barely. His jaw is broken in 2 places. Several ribs are cracked. He'll never perform again. His hands too damaged from trying to shield his face. Maekar pays him handsomely to leave King's Landing and never speak of the incident. The man takes the gold and vanishes into the realm, probably grateful to escape with his life. Aerion is confined to his chambers for a month. He's forbidden from attending court functions. Maesters and septons parade through his room, trying once again to counsel him, to understand what drives this violence. And for the first time, Aerion tells them the truth. He explains, with perfect calm, that he wasn't really angry. He simply needed to correct an insult. Dragons are not foolish creatures to be mocked. They are perfection given form, the ultimate expression of power and majesty. And Targaryens with dragon blood in their veins are extensions of that perfection. To mock a dragon is to mock the very essence of House Targaryen. The puppeteer needed to learn that lesson. The Maesters leave his chamber deeply troubled. They report to Maekar that his son shows no remorse, no understanding that what he did was wrong. More concerning, he seems to genuinely believe his actions were justified, even necessary. Aerion is approaching adolescence now, his body growing stronger, his mind sharper. The cruelty of childhood is meeting the physical capability and freedom of young adulthood. and everyone in the Red Keep understands, though few dare say it aloud, that the worst is yet to come. He starts speaking more openly about his beliefs. Targaryens are not like other men, he tells anyone who will listen. They are descended from dragon lords, from beings who commanded fire and flew above the concerns of common humanity. The blood of the dragon flows through their veins, marking them as superior, as chosen, as something beyond mortal limitations. It's not metaphor for him. It's not poetry or pride in his heritage. Aerion believes with absolute conviction that he is fundamentally different from other human beings, that he should be more than human, that somewhere inside him, waiting to be awakened, is the dragon he knows himself to truly be. And that belief, more than any act of cruelty, more than any violent outburst, is what truly terrifies those who know him. Because a sadist who believes he's a god has no restraints, no limits, no line he won't cross. The question isn't whether Aerion will do something terrible. The question is when and how bad it will be. The spring of 209 after conquest arrives with flowers and warmth, but it brings something else with it, something that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms and change the course of Targaryen history forever. The great spring sickness sweeps across Westeros like an invisible dragon, breathing death instead of fire. It starts in the poorest quarters of King's Landing, as these things usually do. A cough here, a fever there. The Maesters treat it as they would any seasonal illness, but this sickness is different. It spreads faster than anything they've seen before, jumping from house to house, district to district, climbing the social ladder until even the wealthiest families aren't safe. Within weeks, the streets of King's Landing are nearly empty. Those who can flee to their country estates, those who cannot barricade themselves in their homes and pray. The City Watch stops collecting bodies because there are simply too many. The smell of death hangs over the capital like a fog. The Red Keep itself is not spared. Servants fall ill first, then minor nobles, then members of the royal household. Grand Maester Mellus works himself to exhaustion, trying to treat the afflicted, but nothing seems to help. The sickness takes who it wants, showing no pattern, no mercy, no logic. King Daeron II, called Daeron the Good for his wisdom and peaceful reign, falls ill in his own chambers. He's an old man by now, his best years behind him, but still sharp of mind and beloved by his subjects. The Maesters do everything they can, but the sickness is beyond their arts. The king dies in his bed, surrounded by what remains of his family, ending a reign that brought stability and culture to the realm. His grandson and heir, Prince Valar, seemed destined to be a great king. He's everything a prince should be, trained in both warfare and governance, respected by lords and small folk alike. But the sickness doesn't care about destiny or potential. Valar falls ill just days after his grandfather and follows him to the grave before the old king is even properly buried. The succession, so carefully planned, so orderly, suddenly becomes chaotic. The crown passes to Daeron's second son, Aerys. He takes the throne as Aerys I, but everyone who knows him understands this is a problem. Aerys is bookish, withdrawn, more interested in dusty tomes than in ruling. He's not incompetent exactly, but he's weak where the realm needs strength, hesitant where it needs decisiveness. Real power flows to Brynden Rivers, called Bloodraven, the king's bastard brother and hand. Bloodraven is everything. Aerys is not, ruthless and efficient, feared throughout the Seven Kingdoms for his 1,000 spies and his willingness to do whatever needs doing. He'll keep the realm together, but at a price. For Prince Maekar, fourth son of the dead king, the plague creates a strange new reality. He was never supposed to be this close to power. 3 older brothers stood between him and the throne, but now his father is dead. His nephew is dead, and his brother Aerius sits on the Iron Throne with no children of his own. Suddenly, Maekar's bloodline matters in a way it never did before. His sons are now plausible heirs to the 7 kingdoms. And one of those sons is Aerion. The young prince watches the plague with a fascination that disturbs everyone around him. While others hide in their chambers terrified of infection, Aerion walks through the sections of the Red Keep where the sick are quarantined. He observes the dying with clinical interest, noting how the disease progresses, how long it takes, what the final moments look like. When a servant asks if he's not afraid of catching the sickness himself, Aerion simply smiles. He explains that Targaryen blood protects those who are worthy. The disease kills the weak, he says, those whose blood is thin and polluted, but true dragons cannot be touched by such common afflictions. He believes this absolutely. And perhaps there's something to it, at least in his mind, because Aerion never falls ill. Neither does his father Martikar, nor his brothers. The sickness takes thousands in King's Landing, dozens in the Red Keep itself, but it passes over House Targaryen's direct line. To Aerion, this is proof of everything he's always believed. They are different. They are chosen. They are beyond the concerns of ordinary humanity. The plague reshapes his thinking about power and succession. He's always known he was 4th in line among his brothers, behind Darien, Amin, and young Aegon. But now he watches the line of succession shift and collapse above him. His uncle becomes king. His father becomes heir presumptive. And suddenly, being 4th son doesn't seem quite so distant from the throne. Darren is a drunk. Everyone knows it. He drowns himself in wine more with each passing year, clearly unfit to rule. Araman is intelligent and capable, but he's become increasingly drawn to the citadel, talking about forging a maester's chain, about serving the realm through knowledge rather than rulership. That would leave Aegon, still just a boy, earnest and kind in ways that Aerion finds contemptible. Or it would leave Aerion himself. He begins to calculate, to plan, to consider possibilities that seemed absurd just months before. The plague has shown him how quickly everything can change, how death can reshuffle the deck in an instant. If Aerys remains childless, if Darren refuses the throne or drinks himself to death, if Aeron takes maester's vows, if something happens to young Aegon, then Aerion Brightflame could sit the Iron Throne. The thought both thrills and frustrates him. Part of him wants that power, wants to rule the 7 kingdoms and show the realm what a true dragon can do. But another part, the part that's growing stronger every year, wants something more, something beyond kingship, beyond ruling over common men and their petty concerns. He wants transcendence. He wants to become what he believes Targaryens were always meant to be. Not kings of men, but something greater, something that doesn't sit on a throne, because it's too magnificent to be bound by such earthly symbols. The plague finally recedes as summer approaches, leaving devastation in its wake. Thousands dead in King's Landing alone, tens of thousands across the 7 kingdoms. The realm is weakened, its people exhausted and traumatized. King Aerys sits on his throne, uncertain and overwhelmed. Bloodraven pulls strings in the shadows, and Prince Maekar, now heir to that throne, looks at his sons and wonders what the future holds. Targaryen is a young man now, no longer a disturbing child, but a disturbing adult. He's grown tall and strong, trained in combat since childhood, surprisingly skilled with sword and lance. His beauty hasn't faded. If anything, it's become more pronounced. He looks every inch the perfect Targaryen prince. But those who know him, who've seen what he's capable of, understand that appearance is a lie. There's something broken inside him, some fundamental wrongness that no amount of privilege or royal blood can excuse. The cruelty of childhood has evolved into something colder and more calculated. He's learned to hide it better, to choose his moments, to present a face to the world that seems almost normal. Almost. His reputation spreads beyond King's Landing. Lords whisper about the Bright Prince, though they use the title with bitter irony. Stories circulate about his behavior, his beliefs, his disturbing obsession with fire and dragons. Some of it is exaggeration, but much of it is simply the truth spoken quietly behind closed doors. And Aerion doesn't care what they say. Let them whisper. Let them fear him. Their opinions mean nothing. They are cattle, and he is a dragon. Soon, he thinks. Soon, he'll prove it to all of them. The question is how? Prince Micah, watching his son grow more unstable by the month, makes a decision. Aerion needs structure, needs purpose, needs to be somewhere he can be watched and controlled. And there's a tourney coming, a great gathering of knights and nobles at Ashford Meadow in the Reach. It will be a chance for Aerion to prove himself in honorable combat, to channel his aggression into something productive, to perhaps find some measure of redemption. It's a reasonable plan, a father's attempt to save his son from himself. It will fail spectacularly. The tourney at Ashford Meadow in 209 after conquest is meant to be a celebration. Lord Ashford is celebrating his daughter's 13th name day, and he spared no expense. Pavilions in every color spread across the meadow like a field of flowers. Knights from across the 7 kingdoms have gathered, eager to prove their worth in the lists. Merchants set up stalls, selling everything from sweet wine to silver trinkets. Singers perform for crowds. Children run between the tents, their laughter carried on spring winds. It's the kind of event that reminds people why they love the Age of Knights, why tourneys matter, why the pageantry and honor of it all still means something even in an era without dragons. The great spring sickness is behind them now. This is a chance to celebrate life, to remember joy, to forget death for a little while. Prince Aerion Targaryen arrives with a small household of servants and men-at-arms. He's not traveling with his father. Micah is busy with matters of state in King's Landing. This means Aerion has unusual freedom, no stern parent watching his every move, no one to restrain him if his temper flares. He enters the lists under his own name and heraldry. There's no attempt to hide who he is, no mystery knight games. He's a prince of the realm, and he wants everyone to know it. His armor is magnificent, polished to a mirror shine, decorated with the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. His horse is a powerful destrier, bred for war, too aggressive for most riders, but perfect for someone like Aerion. The first day of jousting goes well for him. He's genuinely skilled, whatever his other faults, and he unhors his opponents with brutal efficiency. Each victory seems to feed something in him. Some need to prove his superiority. He doesn't just defeat his opponents, he humiliates them, driving them into the dirt, making sure everyone sees their weakness and his strength. Between events, he walks through the fair grounds, and people step aside to let him pass. Some out of respect for his rank, others out of fear of his reputation. He's aware of both reactions and enjoys them equally. Then he sees the puppets. A woman named Tansel, called Tansel too tall for her unusual height, has set up a puppet show near the merchant stalls. She's a traveling performer, like the man Aerion beat years before, making her living bringing stories to life with carved wooden figures and painted cloth. She's performing a tale about dragons when Aerion passes by, her voice carrying across the crowd as she manipulates the puppets with practiced skill. Something about her show catches his attention. Perhaps it's the dragon puppet. Perhaps it's the memories of that childhood incident. Perhaps it's simply that his mood is already dark. Whatever the reason, he stops to watch. The show is innocent enough. It's a story about a young dragon learning to fly, meant to entertain children. The dragon puppet stumbles and falls in amusing ways before finally mastering flight. The children watching laugh and clap. Tansel smiles, pleased with her audience's reaction. Aerion doesn't laugh. He watches the whole performance with that same rigid stillness that came over him years ago, that same cold fury building behind his eyes. When Tansel finishes and bows to applause, he walks toward her through the dispersing crowd. She doesn't see him coming at first. She's gathering her puppets, smiling at the children, accepting a few copper coins from grateful parents. Then she looks up and sees a Targaryen prince standing before her, and her smile fades. Aerion speaks calmly, almost conversationally. He tells her that her show was offensive, that dragons are not clumsy creatures to be mocked for children's amusement, that she has insulted the ancient lords of Valyria and House Targaryen itself, that such insults cannot be tolerated. Tansel tries to apologize, tries to explain that no insult was meant, that it was just a children's story. But Aerion isn't interested in apologies or explanations. He's interested in punishment. He grabs her by the arm, his grip iron strong, and drags her away from her puppet booth. She struggles, crying out for help. But who's going to intervene? He's a prince. She's a common performer. The guards who might stop this are his own men, wearing Targaryen colors. What happens next is brutal and public. Aerion forces Tansel to her knees in front of gathering onlookers. He takes her right hand, the hand she uses to manipulate her puppets, and begins methodically breaking her fingers. One by one, he bends them back until they snap. She screams. People in the crowd gasp and turn away, but no one moves to stop it. He's not done. He talks while he works, explaining in that same calm voice that she needs to understand the gravity of her offense. That dragons are sacred, that Targaryens are the blood of old Valyria, that common people need to remember their place. Each statement is punctuated by another breaking finger. Then Sir Duncan the Tall arrives. Duncan is a hedge knight, a commoner who won his spurs through deeds rather than birth. He's impossibly tall, nearly 7 feet, broad-shouldered and strong in the way that working men are strong. He's been watching from across the fairgrounds, and what he sees violates everything he believes about knighthood and honor. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't stop to think about rank or consequences. He simply walks up to Prince Aerion Targaryen and hits him. It's a solid punch, delivered with the full force of a man who's fought in real battles, not just tourneys. Aerion goes down hard, blood flowing from his nose, completely unprepared for a commoner to dare lay hands on him. The fairgrounds go silent. Everyone understands what just happened. A hedge knight struck a prince of the blood. There's only one punishment for that, only one possible outcome. Aerion gets to his feet slowly, blood dripping down his face, staining his fine clothes. But he's not frightened. If anything, he seems pleased. This is exactly the kind of situation he understands, the kind of conflict that can only be resolved through violence. He wipes the blood from his face and smiles. He demands Sir Duncan be arrested and tried for assault on a prince. He lists the punishments he wants: a hand, an eye, anything that will cripple the hedge knight for life. But Duncan has rights under the old laws. He demands trial by combat, and not just any trial. He invokes the ancient custom of trial by 7 champions against 7. Aerion's smile widens. He accepts immediately. This is perfect. This is honorable combat with the blessing of gods and men. And when he wins, when his side crushes these common knights who think they can challenge a dragon's authority, everyone will see the proof of Targaryen superiority. Prince Maekar arrives at Ashford the next day, summoned by urgent messages about his son's behavior. With him comes Prince Baekar o' Breakspear, Maekar's nephew and heir to the throne, one of the most respected knights in the 7 kingdoms. They try to defuse the situation, to find some way to avoid the trial by combat, but Aerion refuses any compromise. He wants this fight. He needs it. The trial by 7 takes place on the 3rd day of the tourney. 14 men face each other in the lists, 7 sworn to Aerion's cause, 7 defending Sarah Duncan. The crowds that gather to watch are unprecedented. This isn't entertainment anymore. This is justice, or something like it, playing out in front of the entire realm. The combat is fierce and chaotic. Aerion proves himself as dangerous as his reputation suggests. He's genuinely skilled with sword and lance, moving with a grace that seems at odds with his brutality. He fights not like a tourney knight, but like a soldier, like someone trying to kill rather than simply unhorse. But the men defending Duncan fight with desperation and righteous anger. They're not doing this for glory or honor. They're doing it because they saw what Aerion did to Tansel, because they understand that if a prince can maim a common woman without consequence, then none of them are safe. The battle turns when Prince Maekar, fighting on his son's side out of family obligation, accidentally strikes his nephew Balar Breakspear. It's chaos, 7-on-7 combat where it's hard to tell friend from foe in the dust and confusion. Maekar's blow catches Balar in the head, and though the prince stays on his feet, something is wrong. Aerion himself is finally unhorsed by one of Duncan's champions. He goes down hard, his horse screaming, his perfect armor now dented and covered in mud. For the first time in his life, he's been truly defeated. Not beaten by his father in private, not restrained by guards, but publicly humiliated in honorable combat by common knights. The trial ends with Duncan's victory. Aerion is forced to his feet, blood and mud covering him, to hear the judgment. He must apologize to Tansel, he must pay for her healing, he must acknowledge that he was in the wrong. He does it, but the words come out flat and dead, spoken only because he has no choice. Everyone watching knows he means none of it, that he's saying what he must to avoid worse punishment, that nothing has changed in his heart. Then Prince Balar Breakspear collapses. The blow to his head has done more damage than anyone realized. The Maesters rush to help, but it's too late. One of the finest princes the realm has ever produced dies on the tournament grounds at Ashford, killed by his own uncle's mace in a trial defending a hedge knight from a prince's cruelty. The joy of the tourney is gone. What was meant to be a celebration has become a tragedy, and at the center of it all stands Aerion Targaryen, defeated and humiliated, but somehow still believing himself vindicated. Because in his mind, this wasn't a fair test. The combat was chaotic, too many variables, too much chance. He wasn't defeated because he's weaker or less skilled. He was defeated because the trial itself was flawed. If he had fought Duncan alone, one-on-one, the outcome would have been different. He needs to be stronger. More than just skilled with weapons, more than just a prince with dragon blood. He needs to actually become what he knows himself to be. A dragon in truth, not just in name. And standing there in the mud of Ashford Meadow, blood drying on his face, forced to apologize to a commoner while his uncle lies dead nearby, Aerion makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. If Targaryen blood isn't enough, if dragon heritage isn't enough, then he needs to take the final step. He needs to complete the transformation that lesser Targaryens never achieved. He needs to awaken the dragon sleeping inside him. He just needs to figure out how. Prince Maekar, horrified by his son's behavior and his own role in his nephew's death, makes another decision. Aerion cannot stay in Westeros right now. The scandal is too fresh. The anger too raw. He'll be sent away across the narrow sea to Lys, to serve there and hopefully learn some measure of wisdom and restraint. Aerion accepts his exile without argument. Perhaps distance from Westeros will be useful. Perhaps in the free cities, away from the constraints of the Seven Kingdoms, he'll find what he's looking for. Perhaps he'll find the fire that will finally make him whole. Lys rises from the summer sea like a jewel, its white towers gleaming in the southern sun. It's one of the free cities founded by Valyrian colonists before the Doom, and it's maintained much of that ancient culture. The Lyseni pride themselves on beauty, on pleasure, on the finer things that make life worth living. Their pillow houses are famous across the known world. Their pleasure slaves are trained from childhood in arts that would scandalize the faith of the Seven. Their alchemists and perfumers create scents that can drive men mad with desire. It's also a city built on slavery, where human beings are bought and sold as casually as livestock, where the wrong bloodline or bad fortune can see you chained and sold before your next birthday. The beautiful white towers cast long shadows, and in those shadows terrible things happen every day. This is where Prince Maekar sends his troubled son. Perhaps he hopes the distance will calm Aerion. That being away from the pressures of Westerosi court will give him perspective. Perhaps he simply wants Aerion somewhere he can't cause immediate scandal. Either way, the prince arrives in Lys with a household of servants and enough gold to live like the royalty he is. Aerion takes to the city immediately. Here, there are no maesters to counsel him, no septons to preach at him, no father to watch his every move with disappointed eyes. Here, he's just another rich foreigner with unusual tastes and deep pockets. The Lyseni have seen worse than Aerion Targaryen, and they're happy to accommodate anyone who can pay. He establishes himself in a villa overlooking the harbor, a place of marble columns and cooling fountains. His servants quickly learn that their master keeps strange hours, that he often stays awake all night staring into braziers, that he speaks to the flames in High Valyrian, as if they might answer back. The local nobility, curious about this Targaryen prince, invite him to their feasts and gatherings. And Aerion attends, and he's charming when he wants to be. He can discuss philosophy and history, can appreciate fine wine and finer music. But those who get close to him notice the coldness beneath the charm, the way his eyes go flat when he thinks no one is watching, the way he treats slaves as if they're not quite human. His experiments begin small. He purchases slaves from the markets, young men and women deemed suitable for his purposes. He tells the slave traders he's conducting research into human endurance, into the limits of pain tolerance. They don't ask questions. In Lycus, gold speaks louder than curiosity. What Aerion does with these slaves would horrify even the jaded Lyseni if they knew the full extent of it. He's testing his theories about dragon blood and fire resistance. He forces slaves to hold flames for as long as they can endure, timing their breaking points, noting the exact moment when flesh begins to char. He's looking for patterns, for evidence that some bloodlines are stronger than others, that Valyrian descent provides protection against heat. His findings are inconclusive, which frustrates him. Pain tolerance varies by individual, not by ancestry. Burns affect everyone the same way, regardless of their family tree, but Aerion dismisses these results. The slaves aren't pure enough, he decides. They lack the concentrated dragon blood that makes Targaryen special. He begins seeking out others who might understand his obsession. Lys has temples to Radlus, the Lord of Light, the fire god worshipped across much of Essos. Aerion visits these temples, speaks with the red priests who tend the eternal flames. He asks them about fire magic, about transformation, about the relationship between flame and divinity. The priests are careful in their answers. They recognize madness when they see it, even madness wrapped in royal purple. They speak to him of metaphor and spiritual transformation, of the soul being refined by faith, as gold is refined by flame. They tell him that Raw's fire burns away sin and falsehood, leaving only truth behind. Aerion listens, but he hears what he wants to hear. When they speak of spiritual fire, he thinks of literal flames. When they discuss metaphorical rebirth, he imagines physical transformation. He takes their religious teachings and twists them into something that fits his existing beliefs. One priest, perhaps more reckless or more desperate for a powerful patron's favor, tells Aerion about ancient Valyrian rituals, about how the dragon lords of old were said to bind themselves to their dragons through blood magic and fire, about how some texts suggest the first dragon lords transformed themselves, made their flesh and blood compatible with the creatures they wished to ride. This is exactly what Aerion has been searching for. Proof that transformation is possible, that becoming a dragon isn't just delusion, but ancient tradition. The priest tries to clarify that these are legends, stories, possibly metaphorical accounts, rather than literal history. But Aerion isn't listening anymore. He's found the validation he needed. He begins importing alchemists from across the free cities. Myre, Tyrosh, Volantis, anywhere he can find someone with knowledge of wildfire and its properties. The substance is known in Lies, though not as extensively used as in Westeros, where the Alchemists' Guild guards its secrets jealously. Still, there are those who know how to make it, how to handle it, how to work with its dangerous properties. Aerion commissions small batches, paying enormous sums for the alchemist's discretion. He studies the substance obsessively, watching how it burns, how it flows, how it seems to have a life of its own. The color fascinates him, that eerie green glow that seems to come from within. It's not natural fire. It's something more, something that feels like it shouldn't exist in the ordinary world. He begins calling himself Brightflame. At first, it's what his servants whisper among themselves, a name that captures both his obsession with fire and the disturbing brightness in his eyes when he speaks of transformation. But Targaryen hears the name and claims it for himself. He uses it when introducing himself to certain circles in the shadowy places where he conducts his experiments and his research. The name spreads through Lies like the smoke from his braziers. Targaryen Brightflame, the mad Targaryen prince who thinks he can become a dragon. Some find it amusing, a rich man's harmless eccentricity. Others find it disturbing. But disturbing is profitable in Lies, and no one complains as long as the gold keeps flowing. His villa becomes a strange place. The walls are covered with drawings and diagrams, Tyrion's attempts to map out the process of transformation. He's collected every text about dragons he can find, some genuine histories, others obvious forgeries, but he studies them all with equal intensity. His chambers smell perpetually of smoke and chemicals, and servants report seeing green light flickering under his door at all hours. He writes letters back to Westeros, long, rambling missives to his family, to the Citadel, to anyone he thinks might have knowledge relevant to his quest. Most go unanswered. Those that do receive responses get polite acknowledgments that carefully avoid engaging with his theories. The Maesters recognize the signs of obsessive delusion. Prince Maeskar reads his son's letters with growing despair. But Targaryen also keeps himself informed about political developments in the Seven Kingdoms. He receives regular reports about King Aerys's weak reign, about Bloodraven's shadow government, about his father's increasing prominence as heir presumptive. He tracks these developments not out of homesickness, but out of calculation. The throne matters to him, or at least it should matter, but increasingly he finds it hard to care about such earthly concerns. Why rule over men when you could transcend humanity entirely? Why sit on a throne of swords when you could fly above the world on wings of fire? The more he thinks about it, the more the throne seems like a consolation prize, something for those too weak to achieve true greatness. Still, he's not completely disconnected from reality. He understands that his exile won't last forever, that eventually he'll have to return to Westeros and face whatever consequences his father has planned. He understands that his behavior has damaged his standing, that many lords now see him as unstable, as a threat rather than a potential ruler. Part of him recognizes that drinking wildfire is insane, that it will kill him rather than transform him. That small voice of reason still exists somewhere in his mind, but it's growing quieter every day, drowned out by the louder voice that insists he's special, that normal rules don't apply to dragon blood, that faith and will can overcome mere physical reality. He conducts small experiments, carefully controlled. He heats wine until it's almost boiling and drinks it, training his throat to tolerate extreme temperatures. He holds his hands over flames for increasingly long periods, convincing himself that he's building resistance, that his flesh is adapting. The burns he receives tell a different story, but he dismisses them as temporary weakness that will fade once the transformation is complete. The years in Lice blur together. He's losing track of time, losing interest in anything beyond his obsession. The beautiful city around him might as well not exist. The pleasures that draw other men to Lice hold no appeal. He wants only one thing now, has room in his mind for only one thought. Fire. Transformation, becoming what he was always meant to be. Then, in 221, after conquest, news arrives from Westeros that changes everything. King Aerys I is dead. Prince Marka, Aerion's father, has been crowned as Marka I. The stern warrior prince is now king of the Seven Kingdoms, and Aerion Brightflame, the mad prince of Lice, is suddenly the son of a reigning monarch. His position in the succession has shifted again, moved closer to real power. His father summons him home, not as punishment now, but as family obligation. The king needs his sons around him, even the disturbing ones. Aerion makes preparations to leave. He spent years in exile, years pursuing knowledge that the rest of the world would call madness. He's not the same man who arrived in Lice after the disaster at Ashford. He's something colder now, more focused, more certain of his eventual destiny. He packs carefully, ensuring that certain items make the journey with him. Books and scrolls that would raise questions if examined too closely. Sealed containers that hold substances no prince should possess. The tools of transformation, waiting for the right moment. As his ship sails from Lice back toward Westeros, Aerion stands at the rail and watches the white city recede into the distance. He's learned what he needed to learn here. The rest will happen at home, in the Red Keep, where he belongs. Where the Wildfire is waiting. The Red Keep hasn't changed in Aerion's absence, but everything else has. His father sits on the Iron Throne now. King Makikar I, a warrior who never expected or particularly wanted to rule. The crown sits heavily on him, and it shows in the new lines on his face, the gray creeping into his hair. Being king has aged him in ways that warfare never did. Aerion's return is quiet, deliberately understated. There's no formal welcome, no celebration of the prodigal son coming home. Makikar makes it clear from their first private meeting that Aerion is here on sufferance, that any repeat of past behavior will result in permanent exile or worse. The king's voice is hard when he speaks to his son, carrying none of the hope that maybe distance and time have changed him. Because they haven't. Micah can see it in Aerion's eyes, that same cold certainty, that same fundamental wrongness. If anything, the years in Lice have made it worse. There's a focus to Aerion now that wasn't there before, as if he's looking past the physical world to something only he can perceive. The brothers meet with mixed reactions. Darren the drunkard barely notices Aerion's return, too lost in his wine to care about family politics. He's abandoned any pretense of sobriety now, drinking from morning until he passes out each night. The court has learned to work around him, to treat him as if he doesn't exist. He's a living ghost, present but not really there. Aemon is different. He's become a maester, forged his chain at the Citadel, and though he's taken no specific post yet, everyone knows he's renounced all claims to succession. He wears his maester's robes with quiet dignity, serving the realm through knowledge rather than rule. When he sees Arend again, there's sadness in his eyes but no surprise. He tried to reach his brother once, tried to show him a different path, that failure weighs on him still. Their conversation is brief and formal. Aemon asks about Lys, about what Aerion learned there. Aerion's answers are vague, deflecting, revealing nothing of substance. They're strangers now, separated by more than just Ammon's Maester's chain. They're separated by fundamental differences in how they see the world, in what they believe is possible, in what they think humanity should strive toward. Then, there's Aegon. No longer little Egg, but a young man now. He spent years as a squire, learned what it means to serve rather than command, developed empathy and understanding that most royalty never acquire. He's proven himself in battle, shown courage and capability. The realm looks at him and sees a future king worth having. Aegon sees Aerion and fear flashes across his face before he can hide it. It's instinctive, the reaction of someone who remembers childhood terror, who carries scars that never quite healed. He masters himself quickly, meets Aerion's eyes with as much steadiness as he can manage. But both brothers know the truth. Aegon is afraid, and Aerion enjoys that fear. The succession question hangs over everything. Officially, Daron is heir, first son of the king. But Daron will never rule. Everyone knows it. He's made that clear in every way except formal renunciation. That should make a Daron second in line, the spare heir, one death away from the throne. Except no one wants that. The lords whisper in corners about the succession, about the mad prince who tortured a woman at Ashford, who spent years in Lys conducting experiments no sane man would consider. They don't say it openly, but the question is there in every small council meeting, every court gathering. What happens if Mashkar dies and Targaryen becomes king? Some suggest that Aegon should be named heir directly, passing over both Daron and Aerion. Others argue that sets a dangerous precedent, that you can't just skip heirs because you don't like them. The debate goes nowhere because Magar refuses to engage with it. He's king now, and barring disaster he'll be king for years to come. The succession can sort itself out later. Aerion is aware of these discussions, aware that he's seen as a problem to be managed rather than a prince to be respected. It should bother him, should spark rage or at least frustration. Instead he finds himself oddly indifferent. The throne matters less than it once did. It's earthly power, limited and temporal. What he seeks is eternal, transcendent beyond the reach of crown or kingdom. Still, he plays his role. He attends small council meetings when required, offers opinions on military matters where his tactical mind proves surprisingly sharp. He participates in court functions, maintaining the appearance of a dutiful son. The mask he learned to wear years ago fits perfectly now, and he slips it on whenever necessary. But his real life happens in private, in his chambers deep within the Red Keep. He's managed to secure rooms that suit his purposes, away from the most trafficked areas, where strange smells and odd sounds won't draw immediate attention. Here, surrounded by his books and diagrams, his braziers and carefully hidden containers, he continues his research. The Alchemist's Guild proves both useful and troublesome. They're the only source of wildfire in Westeros, their secrets jealously guarded, their craft practiced in the depths beneath the city. Aerion approaches them carefully, using his position as a prince to gain access to their wisdom halls, their libraries, their understanding of the substance they've spent centuries perfecting. The alchemists are afraid of him. They can sense his obsession, see the dangerous focus in his questions. When he asks about the properties of wildfire, about what happens when it's consumed, about whether dragon blood might provide protection against its effects, they give careful, non-committal answers. They explain that wildfire burns at temperatures beyond natural flame, that it clings to whatever it touches, that there is no cure or treatment for wildfire burns. Aerion listens but doesn't hear. He asks them to produce quantities for his use, claiming he's conducting research for the crown, that the king wants to understand the weapon that's been stored beneath the city for generations. The alchemists can't refuse a prince, but they're deeply uncomfortable with the request. They produce what he asks for, but in small amounts, hoping to limit whatever madness he's planning. He stores the wildfire in his chambers, in specially designed containers that the alchemist reluctantly provided. The substance glows with that eerie green light, even in darkness, pulsing as if alive. Aerion sits and watches it for hours, convinced he can see patterns in its movement, messages in its glow. It's calling to him, he thinks. Dragon calling to dragon, flame recognizing its kin. His father notices his isolation, the way Aerion spends less and less time at court. Mekar tries interventions, summoning Aerion to private meetings, attempting to assign him duties that might ground him in reality. Take command of the City Watch, lead a military expedition against bandits in the Kingswood, do something productive that doesn't involve sitting alone with dangerous substances and delusional theories. Aerion accepts some assignments to maintain appearances, but never for long. He always finds reasons to return to the Red Keep, to his chambers, to his waiting experiments. The pull is too strong now, the obsession too complete. Everything else is just distraction from what matters, delay before the inevitable. The servants who tend his rooms report strange things. They find burn marks on floors and walls. They smell chemical odors that make their eyes water. They see drawings and writings covering every surface, mad calculations and diagrams that make no sense to anyone but their creator. The bravest among them mention these concerns to the steward, who reports them up the chain of command. But what can anyone do? He's a prince. His chambers are his own. Guards are quietly assigned to watch his movements, not to restrict him, but to monitor, to provide warning if he seems about to do something catastrophic. They follow at a discreet distance when he moves through the castle, note who he speaks with, report any unusual behavior. It's surveillance dressed as protection, and Aerion is fully aware of it. He doesn't care. Let them watch. They can't see inside his mind, can't understand the vision that drives him. They're looking at the surface while he peers into depths they can't imagine. Soon, very soon, he'll prove everything. He'll show them what true Targaryens are capable of, what dragon blood really means. The political situation in the Seven Kingdoms provides distractions from the succession question. Matakar's reign faces challenges, rebellion in the Dornish marches, trouble with the Ironborn, the endless complexity of keeping the realm united. The king throws himself into these problems, perhaps grateful for concrete issues he can address rather than the abstract horror of his son's deteriorating sanity. Tyrion watches his father age under the strain of kingship and feels nothing. No sympathy, no filial concern, no recognition of shared humanity. Makair is just another man, bound by mortal limitations, playing at power while real transformation remains beyond his grasp. The crown weighs him down because he's not strong enough to transcend such earthly burdens. Years pass in this strange stalemate. Targaryen maintains his facade of normalcy while conducting his private research. Makair rules while pretending his son isn't a ticking explosive in the heart of his household. The court whispers while hoping someone else will deal with the problem. And all the while the wildfire waits in its sealed containers, glowing green in the darkness. Aerion is in his late 30s now, still beautiful in that unsettling Targaryen way, still physically imposing, still capable of charm when it suits him. But there's something off about him that even strangers notice. He doesn't blink as often as he should. His gaze focuses on empty air, as if seeing things invisible to others. He talks to himself in High Valyrian when he thinks no one is listening. The breaking point approaches, though no one knows exactly when it will come. Aerion himself doesn't know, not consciously, but deep in his mind. Beneath the layers of delusion and obsession, a decision is forming. He's done enough research, accumulated enough knowledge, prepared himself as much as possible. The time to act is coming. The time to finally prove what he's always known himself to be. The time to stop being a prince playing at dragons and become the dragon he was meant to be from birth. All he needs is the courage, to take that final step, to lift the cup and drink, to let the wildfire transform him from the inside out, to burn away everything weak and human, and emerge reborn as something magnificent and terrible. He stands at the window of his chamber, looking out over King's Landing, watching the city go about its mundane business. They have no idea what's coming, no conception that they're about to witness something that will echo through history. The transformation of a prince into a dragon, proof of everything House Targaryen has ever claimed about their divine nature. Or they're about to witness a madman kill himself in the most horrifying way imaginable. But Aerion doesn't let himself think about that possibility, can't let himself doubt. Not now, not after everything. The wildfire glows behind him, patient and eternal, waiting for him to finally find the strength to do what must be done. To understand why Aerion Brightflame believes drinking wildfire will transform him into a dragon, you have to understand how he sees the world. His delusion isn't random madness or sudden impulse. It's the logical conclusion of beliefs he's held since childhood, built layer by layer over decades, reinforced by selective reading and self-serving interpretation until it becomes unshakable truth in his mind. The foundation is simple. Targaryens have dragon blood. This isn't metaphor to Aerion, not poetic language or symbolic heritage. It's literal biological fact. His ancestors rode dragons, commanded dragons, bonded with dragons in ways that transcended normal human-animal relationships. The dragon lords of old Valyria weren't just people who happened to tame dangerous creatures. They were something more than human, their very essence compatible with dragonkind in ways that ordinary bloodlines could never achieve. From there his logic builds. Dragons breathe fire. This is observable fact, recorded in countless histories and accounts. The fire they produce isn't normal flame. It's hotter, fiercer, almost alive in how it moves and burns. Dragon fire is the essence of what makes them powerful, the physical manifestation of their supremacy over all other creatures. Therefore, Aerion reasons, fire must be the key element of dragon nature. It's not scales or wings or size that makes a dragon at its core. It's the fire, the ability to produce, control, and exist in harmony with flame. Everything else flows from that central truth. And if dragons are creatures of fire, and Targaryens carry dragon blood, then doesn't it follow that fire should be compatible with Targaryen flesh? That somewhere in their lineage, buried under generations of human inheritance, lies the capacity to become more dragon-like, to awaken abilities that have merely been dormant, waiting for someone bold enough to trigger the transformation. He finds support for these ideas in his reading, though he has to interpret creatively. Ancient Valyrian texts speak of blood magic and fire sorcery, of rituals that bound dragon lords to their mounts. Most scholars read these as symbolic or metaphorical descriptions of spiritual connections dressed in dramatic language. Aerion reads them as instruction manuals, literal guides to transformation that previous Targaryens were too cowardly or too corrupted by non-Valyrian blood to attempt. He pores over accounts of Targaryen resistance to heat. Daenerys I, wife of Aegon the Conqueror, was said to prefer baths so hot that her servants couldn't test the water without scalding their hands. Aegon the Unlikely, his own youngest brother, though still a boy, supposedly never felt the cold even in deepest winter. These are family stories, possibly exaggerated, certainly not evidence of true immunity to fire. But Aerion sees them as proof that the capability is there, just waiting to be fully awakened. He becomes fixated on accounts from before the doom of Valyria, trying to piece together what the original dragon lords were really like. The histories are fragmentary, Most knowledge lost when the freehold was destroyed in volcanic cataclysm. But what remains speaks of a civilization where blood magic was commonplace, where the boundaries between human and dragon blurred, where transformation was pursued as the highest achievement of their culture. What if, Aerion wonders, the doom happened because the Valyrians lost their way? What if they became too human, too comfortable, too far removed from the fire that should have been their natural state? What if the volcanic destruction was nature correcting itself, purging the weak and impure? And what if House Targaryen survived because they retained some spark of the original truth, some connection to fire that protected them when everything else burned? It's conspiracy thinking, finding patterns that aren't there, building grand theories from fragments and assumptions. But it feels true to Aerion, resonates with something deep in his psyche that needs to believe he's special, that his cruelty and his madness serve some higher purpose. Then there's the wildfire itself. He studied it obsessively, watched it burn, observed its properties. It's not natural fire, that much is obvious. Natural flame is yellow or orange, burns hot, but predictably. Wildfire is green, glows even when not burning, seems to have its own terrible life. The alchemists call it substance, refuse to explain exactly how it's made, guard their secrets as if revealing them would unleash catastrophe. Aerion concludes that wildfire is the closest thing to pure dragon flame that humans can create. It's not quite the real thing, can't be, because it's made by people without dragon blood, but it's close enough. Close enough that consuming it might trigger the transformation he seeks. Close enough that it could serve as the catalyst to awaken dormant draconic traits. He convinces himself through a twisted form of logic that makes perfect sense in his mind. If someone without dragon blood drank wildfire, yes, they would die horribly. The substance would burn them from inside, consume them utterly, because their flesh has no affinity for flame. But someone with true dragon blood, concentrated and pure like his own, their body might recognize the fire as kin, might accept it, might use it to trigger changes that have been waiting in the bloodline for generations. The pain would be part of it, he decides. Transformation always involves pain. A butterfly suffers when breaking free of its cocoon. A snake must endure the agony of shedding its skin. Pain is just proof that the process is working, that the old form is dying to make way for the new. He has to embrace the pain, welcome it, understand that suffering is the price of transcendence. He thinks about this constantly, working through every angle, addressing every doubt before it can take root. What if the wildfire kills him? Then he wasn't truly worthy. His blood wasn't pure enough, and death is preferable to continuing as a failed dragon trapped in human form. What if the transformation is only partial? Then he'll have proven the principle works and can refine the process. What if nothing happens? Impossible, because he knows what he is, knows it with certainty that transcends mere evidence. The pyromancers who provide him with wildfire don't help his delusion, but they don't challenge it directly either. When Aerion asks them about the substance's properties, they give factual answers. Yes, wildfire burns hotter than any natural flame. Yes, it can consume almost anything. Yes, there is no known treatment for wildfire injuries, because by the time you need treatment, the damage is already fatal. But they never say what seems obvious to anyone else, that drinking wildfire would be instant suicide regardless of your bloodline. They're too afraid of contradicting a prince, too aware that Aerion doesn't react well to people who challenge his beliefs. So they give him information while carefully avoiding judgment, and in that silence, Aerion hears confirmation. He interprets their fear as respect. Their reluctance as recognition that they're dealing with something beyond their understanding. When they warn him about wildfire's dangers, he hears them confirming its power. When they explain that no one has ever survived contact with the substance, he hears that no one has ever been worthy enough to try. His isolation makes everything worse. He has no one he trusts to talk him down, no one whose opinion he values enough to let them plant seeds of doubt. His family has learned to avoid him. The court gives him wide berth. The servants are too terrified to do anything but obey. He exists in a bubble of his own making, where every thought echoes back to him unchanged, where delusion reinforces delusion in an endless cycle. Sometimes, late at night when he's been staring at the wildfire for hours, a small voice in his mind whispers that this is insane, that he's about to kill himself based on twisted logic and misinterpreted texts. That dragon blood is just a metaphor for Valyrian ancestry, not literal immunity to fire. That he's a man, just a man, no matter how pure his bloodline or how deeply he believes otherwise. But that voice grows quieter every day. He's invested too much in this belief to abandon it. Now, his entire sense of self is built on being special, on being chosen, on being something more than human. If he's not a dragon waiting to awaken, then what is he? Just a cruel man with a pretty face and royal blood. Just someone who hurt people for no reason, whose life served no greater purpose. No, unacceptable. There has to be meaning, has to be destiny, has to be transformation waiting at the end of all this suffering and obsession. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. So he silences the doubt. He focuses on the certainty. He remembers every story about Targaryen fire resistance, every text about draconic transformation, every moment when he felt connected to something greater than his mortal flesh. He builds the belief higher and stronger until it's unassailable, until nothing can shake it, until drinking wildfire seems not just possible, but inevitable. He's ready now, has been ready for years really, just waiting for courage to match conviction. The wildfire glows in its container, patient as only inanimate objects can be patient. It doesn't care about his theories or his destiny. It simply is what it is, a substance that burns everything it touches, that shows no mercy and makes no exceptions. Aerion looks at it and sees his future, sees the moment when everything will finally make sense, when all his suffering and isolation will be vindicated, when the world will witness what true dragon blood can achieve. He sees himself emerging from fire reborn, transformed, finally matching outside to inside, body to belief. What he doesn't see, what he refuses to let himself see, is the truth that everyone else already knows, that he's a madman about to commit suicide in the most agonizing way possible, that his delusion will die with him, burned away by the same fire he thought would save him, that his legacy will be a cautionary tale, not a triumph. But perhaps that's mercy in its way. He'll die believing he was right, believing transformation is just seconds away, believing he's about to become the dragon he always knew himself to be. He'll never have to face the moment of clarity that would destroy him more thoroughly than any wildfire. The moment of realizing he was wrong about everything. The cup waits, the fire waits, and Aerion Brightflame, convinced of his destiny and blind to his doom, prepares for the transformation that will never come. By 230, after conquest, Aerion has entered his late 30s, and the changes are visible to anyone who looks closely. His beauty remains intact, that perfect Valyrian symmetry that turns heads even now. But something fundamental has shifted in his presence. His skin seems too pale, almost translucent in certain lights. His eyes hold a brightness that has nothing to do with health or vitality. Servants who must enter his chambers report that he barely seems to sleep, that they find him standing motionless for hours, staring at flames. The political situation grows more precarious around him. In 229, during a small council meeting about succession planning, Aerion speaks for the first time in months. When a lord suggests codifying the line of inheritance to provide stability, Aerion stands abruptly and declares that such discussions are meaningless. Crowns are for men, he says. Dragons need no thrones. The silence that follows is absolute. Even Mathger seems at a loss for how to respond to his son's public unraveling. His brother Aerion takes a turn for the worse that same year, his drinking finally catching up to him. For 3 days the court believes the drunkard is dying, and suddenly Aerion is being discussed as immediate heir. The panic this causes is palpable. Lords who never speak openly about the succession suddenly find their voices, suggesting alternatives, proposing that young Aegon be named Prince of Dragonstone, floating ideas about great councils and elections. Aerion survives, but the incident reveals how desperately the realm wants to avoid King Aerion. Petitions reach the throne, carefully worded to avoid direct insult but clear in their intent. The faith sends representatives to speak with Maegor about the spiritual fitness of potential heirs. The Meisters submit treatises on historical precedents for passing over unsuitable successors. Everyone is searching for a legal way to ensure Aerion never wears the crown. Aerion notices none of this, or perhaps he notices and simply doesn't care. He's stopped attending most court functions, appearing only when his father directly commands it. When he does show himself, he's there in body but not in spirit, his attention clearly elsewhere. He answers questions with single words or long silences. Once, during a feast, he simply stands and leaves mid-course without explanation, walking back to his chambers as if pulled by invisible strings. His relationship with young Aegon deteriorates further during these years. Aeg is a man now, proven in battle, respected by lords and small folk alike. He's everything a prince should be, kind where Aerion is cruel, humble where Aerion is arrogant, connected to reality, where Aerion has drifted into private delusions. The contrast makes Aerion's unfitness even more apparent. There's an incident in 231 that nearly turns violent. Aegon, perhaps trying one last time to reach his brother, comes to Aerion's chambers uninvited. He speaks about their childhood, about Aerion's intelligence and potential, about how it's not too late to step back from whatever precipice he's approaching. Aerion listens without expression, then tells Aegon very calmly that he was always weak, that kindness is just cowardice dressed in virtue, that Aeg will never understand what true Targaryens are meant to become. The threat beneath the words is unmistakable. Aegon leaves and never tries again. The practical preparations accelerate during this period. Aerion has been accumulating wildfire for years, but now he refines his approach. He needs the substance pure and potent, needs enough of it, needs the right vessel for the act. He commissions a cup from a goldsmith, specifying exact dimensions and decorations. 3-headed dragons wind around the stem. Valyrian glyphs circle the rim. Phrases about fire and rebirth that Aerion has cobbled together from various texts. The goldsmith creates a masterpiece, not knowing what it's intended for. When he delivers it, Aerion pays him triple the agreed price on one condition, that he never speak of this commission to anyone. The goldsmith agrees, takes the gold, and promptly tells everyone he knows about the Mad Prince's strange cup. But by then it doesn't matter. Everyone already knows Aerion is obsessed with fire. The Alchemists' Guild becomes increasingly uncomfortable with his requests. He's asked for quantities of wildfire that exceed any reasonable experimental need. He's inquired about its effects when consumed, when heated, when mixed with wine or water. The Wisdom who leads the guild tries to refuse further cooperation, citing safety concerns and guild regulations. Aerion responds with such cold fury that the man fears for his life. The wildfire deliveries continue. Aerion stores everything in sealed containers in a locked chest in his chambers. The servants can smell it, despite the seal's that distinctive sharp scent that makes eyes water. They report it to the steward, who reports it to Maegor, who confronts his son for what will be the last time. The conversation happens behind closed doors, but raised voices carry. Maekar demands to know what Aerion is planning, what he's doing with dangerous substances in the heart of the Red Keep. Aerion's response is chilling in its calmness. He tells his father that he's preparing for his true birth, for the moment when he stops pretending to be human. Maekar tries reason, tries commands, finally tries pleading. Nothing penetrates. Aerion is beyond reach now, locked in a delusion so complete that reality can't touch it. The king leaves his son's chambers, looking like he's aged a decade. He tells his guards to watch Aerion constantly, to report any unusual activity immediately. But what can they really do? Arrest a prince for having strange beliefs, lock him up for being mad. Maekar is trapped between his duty as king and his identity as father, unable to act decisively in either role. Court life continues around this slowly unfolding tragedy. There are still feasts and tourneys, still political intrigues and marriage alliances, still the endless work of governance. But everyone is aware of Targaryen's presence like a distant storm, something dangerous approaching but not yet arrived. Conversations die when he enters a room. People make excuses to leave when he sits down. He's become a ghost haunting his own life. His appearance changes subtly. He stops cutting his hair, letting it grow long and wild. He neglects his clothing, wearing the same robes for days. His hands show burn scars from his heat resistance experiments, angry red marks that never quite heal. When he speaks, which is rare, his voice has a dreamy quality, as if he's narrating events happening somewhere else. The Maesters make one final attempt to intervene. 3 of them come to his chambers with offers of help, of treatment, of herbal remedies that might calm his mind. Aerion listens to their presentation with what might be amusement. When they finish, he asks them a single question. If a caterpillar refused to enter its cocoon because Maesters told it transformation was impossible, would it ever become a butterfly? The Maesters have no answer. They leave and don't return. In the early months of 232, Aerion begins what he thinks of as his final preparation. He fasts for days at a time, believing it will purify his body for what's coming. He meditates before flames, trying to attune himself to fire's essence. He reads the same passages from his Valyrian texts over and over, committing them to memory, treating them like prayers or spells. He writes letters, but never sends them. Long rambling explanations of his theories, defenses of his choices, predictions of what he'll become. Some are addressed to his family, others to the realm, others to no one in particular. They pile up on his desk, a paper trail of disintegrating sanity that will be burned after his death. The final week arrives. Though Aerion doesn't consciously decide this is the time, it simply feels right, feels inevitable, feels like the moment has finally come. He stops eating entirely, stops sleeping, spends every hour either staring at the wildfire or preparing himself mentally for what he's about to do. His servants notice the change, report it urgently. But what is there to report? That the prince seems more focused, that he's stopped eating. These aren't crimes. The guards outside his door listen to him pacing, hear him speaking in High Valyrian to the flames. They exchange worried glances, but take no action. On what will be his last night alive, Aerion sits before the wildfire and feels absolute certainty wash over him. This is right. This is destiny. This is what he was born to do. Every moment of his life has led here, every act of cruelty and every hour of obsession building toward this transformation. He's ready. The dragon inside him is ready. All that remains is the act itself. He sleeps for a few hours. His first real sleep in days. When he wakes, sunlight is streaming through his window. It's a beautiful morning, unseasonably warm for the time of year. Targaryen takes this as a sign. Fire welcoming fire, dragon calling to dragon. He opens the chest where the wildfire waits. He removes the cup he commissioned, this vessel that will hold his transformation. He pours carefully, watching the green substance flow like liquid light, glowing even in the morning sun. It fills the cup halfway, which should be enough, more than enough. He holds it up, examines it from every angle. This is the moment every story has been building toward. The hero's test, the dragon's awakening, the proof that will change everything. Aerion Brightflame, Prince of the Seven Kingdoms, son of Maekar I, descendant of dragon lords and conquerors, raises the cup to his lips and drinks. The first sip burns unlike anything Aerion has ever experienced. It's not the gradual heat of hot liquid. It's instant, absolute, a chemical fire that ignites on contact. His lips blister immediately. His tongue goes numb, then explodes into agony. The inside of his mouth feels like it's being scraped away by invisible knives made of flame. For a split second, some rational part of his brain screams at him to stop, to spit it out, to save himself while there's still time. But Aerion is beyond rational thought now. The pain must mean it's working. Transformation requires suffering. He forces himself to swallow. The wildfire slides down his throat, and the real horror begins. His esophagus, that delicate tube of tissue never meant to contact such substances, starts to disintegrate. The wildfire doesn't just burn, it clings, spreads, consumes. Every cell it touches dies instantly, and the pain signals they send before dying create a symphony of agony that overwhelms everything else. But Aerion drinks more. His hand is shaking now, wildfire sloshing in the cup, some of it spilling onto his fingers and eating through skin. He barely notices. He's committed now, all in, no turning back. He tilts the cup higher and pours the remaining contents down his throat in 3 desperate swallows. The wildfire hits his stomach, and his body finally understands the magnitude of the threat. His stomach lining begins to burn away. The substance spreads through his digestive system like spilled oil catching flame. His body's automatic responses kick in, trying to vomit, trying to expel the poison, but the wildfire has already damaged his throat too badly. Nothing can come back up. It can only continue its journey downward. Aerion drops the cup. It clatters on the stone floor, rolling away, still glowing faintly green from residue. He tries to stand, to move, to do something. His legs won't respond properly. He falls to his knees, and that's when the first scream escapes him. It's not a human sound. It's pure animal terror and pain, the noise a creature makes when it's being burned alive from the inside. It tears out of his damaged throat, carrying with it pieces of tissue and blood. The scream echoes through the Red Keep's corridors, penetrating stone walls, reaching guards 3 rooms away. They burst through his door to find Aerion on the floor, convulsing. Smoke is coming from his mouth. His skin is turning red, then purple, as his internal organs cook and rupture. His eyes are wide, showing white all around, filled with an expression that might be realization or might just be unimaginable agony. One guard runs for the Maesters. Another tries to approach Aerion to help somehow. But what help is possible? The damage is already done. Irreversible, progressing by the second. The wildfire is spreading through his circulatory system now, his heart pumping poison throughout his body with each desperate beat. Aerion's screams continue, weaker now as his throat collapses entirely. They become wet, gurgling sounds as blood fills his airways. His hands claw at his stomach, his chest, trying to tear away the flesh that's cooking from beneath. His perfect Valyrian features twist into something unrecognizable, a mask of pure suffering. The Maesters arrive within minutes, but they stop in the doorway, stunned by what they're witnessing. Grand Maester knows immediately what happened. The smell of wildfire is unmistakable, and the cup lying on the floor tells the whole story. There's nothing in their training for this. No treatment, no remedy. They can only watch. More people arrive. Guards, servants, nobles drawn by the screams. They crowd the doorway and corridor, trying to see, then immediately wishing they hadn't. This is nightmare made flesh, the kind of death that will haunt everyone who witnesses it for the rest of their lives. Aerion's body is shutting down in stages. His kidneys fail as wildfire-tainted blood passes through them. His liver tries to filter the poison and simply dissolves. His lungs fill with fluid and burned tissue. His brain, starved of oxygen and bombarded with pain signals beyond anything human physiology was designed to process, begins to fail. But he doesn't die quickly. The human body is remarkably resilient, even in the face of such catastrophic damage. Aerion lingers for agonizing minutes, conscious through most of it, feeling everything. His mind, that brilliant, twisted mind that led him here, remains aware until nearly the end. Does he realize his mistake in those final moments? Does he understand that there will be no transformation, no dragon awakening, no vindication of his beliefs? Or does he die still convinced that any second now the pain will pass and he'll emerge reborn? No one will ever know. His last moments are private, locked inside a dying brain, unknowable to the horrified witnesses surrounding him. Perhaps that's the final cruelty of his story. Even his death offers no clear moral, no definitive lesson, just suffering and mystery. His convulsions slow, then stop. His breathing, harsh and wet, rattles to silence. His eyes, those purple Targaryen eyes that stared into flames for so many years, go glassy and fixed. Prince Aerion Brightflame, age 41, dies on the floor of his chambers in a spreading pool of his own blood and bile, surrounded by people who feared him in life and will speak of him in whispers for generations. The silence after his final breath is profound. No one knows what to say or do. They're looking at the corpse of a prince who killed himself in the most bizarre way imaginable, and the implications are staggering. How do you explain this? How do you record it? How do you tell the king his son is dead because he drank wildfire, believing it would turn him into a dragon? Word spreads through the Red Keep with terrible speed. Servants tell servants, guards tell officers. Within an hour, everyone knows Prince Aerion is dead, killed by his own madness. The details vary in the telling, growing more grotesque with each retelling, but the core truth remains unchanged. King Makar receives the news while holding court. A messenger whispers in his ear, and the blood drains from the king's face. He stands without a word, walks from the throne room, and doesn't emerge from his private chambers for 2 days. When he finally does, he looks like he's aged a decade. He gives orders for his son's body to be prepared for burial, but refuses to view it himself. Aegon hears the news and feels a complex tangle of emotions: relief that the threat is gone, guilt for feeling relieved, horror at how it happened, and underneath everything, a bone-deep sadness for what his brother could have been, if not for the poison of his beliefs. Maester Aemon is at the wall by this time, having taken his vows and chosen exile to remove himself from succession politics. When a raven brings news of Aerion's death, he meditates in silence for hours. Later he'll write in his private journal that he saw this coming years ago, that Aerion was always moving toward this end, that perhaps it was inevitable from the moment he first looked into flames and saw destiny instead of mere fire. The Alchemists' Guild goes into immediate panic. They provided the wildfire that killed a prince. Their wisdom spends sleepless nights fearing they'll all be executed. But Makar, either from grief or wisdom or simple exhaustion, takes no action against them. What would be the point? They gave Aerion what he demanded, as subjects must when princes make requests. The fault lies elsewhere. The body has to be prepared for burial. and that falls to silent sisters and maesters who draw lots to determine who must perform the grim task. What they find when they examine Aerion confirms the Wildfire's horrific effects. His internal organs are destroyed beyond recognition. His throat and stomach are burned away entirely. It's a wonder he lived as long as he did. They prepare the body as best they can, wrapping it in funeral shrouds, making it presentable for the pyre. Because that's how Targaryens are traditionally laid to rest, in fire, returned to the element they claimed as their own. The irony doesn't escape anyone. Aerion wanted fire to transform him in life. Instead, it claims him in death, like it claims everyone else. The funeral is small and quiet. The Takir attends but doesn't speak. The Zygon stands beside his father, supporting him physically when the old king seems about to collapse. A few lords and courtiers come out of obligation. The small folk don't mourn. Most are relieved the Brightflame prince is gone, one less threat to the realm's stability. Septon speaks the traditional prayers, but his words feel hollow. How do you pray for a man who died in such a way? How do you ask the Seven to grant mercy to someone who showed none? The Septon does his duty and moves through the ritual, but even he seems eager for it to end. The pyre is lit. The flames rise high and hot, consuming the wrapped body, Aerion Brightflame, who believed fire would be his salvation, who thought he was too special to burn, who died trying to prove he was a dragon, reduced to ash like any common man. His death raises immediate questions about succession. He left behind a son, a baby named Maegor, after Maegor the Cruel. The boy is technically next in line after Daron, who still lives though barely. But no one wants a grandson of Aerion Brightflame anywhere near the throne. The realm has seen what that bloodline produces. The lords begin plotting immediately, having conversations they couldn't have while Aerion lived. They discuss great councils and legal precedents, ways to ensure young Maegor is passed over for Aegon. They're not cruel men trying to punish an innocent child. They're terrified men trying to prevent another Aerion, trying to protect the realm from bloodline madness. History will remember this moment differently, depending on who tells the story. The Mices record it as cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession and delusion. The small folk turn it into a gruesome legend, the mad prince who thought he was a dragon. The nobility use it as justification for passing over inconvenient heirs. But perhaps the real lesson is simpler and more terrible. Belief, no matter how sincere, doesn't change reality. Conviction, no matter how absolute, doesn't make the impossible possible. And fire, regardless of what you believe about your blood or your destiny, will burn you just the same. The immediate problem after Aerion's death isn't grief or mourning. It's the baby. Maegor Targaryen, less than a year old, named for one of the cruelest kings in Westerosi history, suddenly matters in ways his mother never anticipated. He's Aerion's only child, which makes him a potential heir, and that makes him a problem everyone must solve. His mother is a minor noblewoman who married Aerion during his years in Lycie. The marriage was legitimate but hardly celebrated, more a formality than a love match. She's been living quietly in the Red Keep, trying to stay invisible, hoping her husband's madness wouldn't touch her or her child. Now she finds herself at the center of a succession crisis she never asked for. The legal situation seems clear enough on its surface. King Mekia has 4 sons. Daron the eldest, who refuses to rule. Darien, who's now dead. Daron, who took maester's vows and removed himself from consideration. And Aegon, young but capable, who everyone wants to be heir, except Aerion's death doesn't remove his line from succession. It just moves it to the next generation, to baby Mekia. In theory, if Daron refuses the throne and dies without issue, Maegor should become king with a regent until he comes of age. In practice, the realm would rather burn than see a grandson of Aerion Brightflame crowned. The fear isn't about the child himself, who might grow up perfectly normal. The fear is about what he might become, what his father's blood might have passed on, whether madness breeds true in Targaryen lines. The lords begin their maneuvering immediately. They can't openly advocate for passing over a legal heir without setting dangerous precedents. But they can raise questions, plant doubts, suggest alternatives. Letters flow between castles and keeps. Quiet meetings happen in shadowed corners. Everyone is searching for the legal framework that will put Aegon on the throne without looking like they're violating succession law. Then, King Maekar dies. It's 233. After conquest, barely a year after Aekarion's horrific end, the king is campaigning against a rebellious lord in the Stormlands when he's struck down in battle. The death is quick and almost merciful compared to what his son endured. But the timing couldn't be worse. The realm suddenly needs a king, and the succession question can't be delayed any longer. Daeron the Drunkard is summoned and offered the crown. He refuses immediately, as everyone knew he would. He's been refusing in every way except formally for years. Now he makes it official. He'll never be king. The wine has destroyed any capacity he might have had for rulership, and he knows it. He signs documents removing himself from succession, then returns to his cups, probably relieved the burden has passed. That should make baby Magasi heir. That should mean a regency council until the boy comes of age. But the Great Council of 233, after conquest, has other ideas. They convene quickly, bringing together lords from across the realm to decide who should rule. The debate is intense, careful, and ultimately predetermined by everyone's unspoken agreement that Aerion's bloodline must not take the throne. The arguments against Maegor are presented with careful legal reasoning. He's too young, just an infant, which means years of regency government. Regencies are unstable, prone to civil war, dangerous for the realm. The boy's father was demonstrably mad, which raises questions about inherited traits. The Targaryen bloodline has shown worrying patterns of instability. Perhaps it's time to favor capability over strict primogeniture. The arguments for Aegon are simpler. He's proven himself in battle and governance. He's beloved by small folk who know him from his years as a wandering squire. He's wise beyond his years, humble, connected to the common people in ways most royalty never achieve. He would make a good king, possibly a great one, and conveniently, choosing him avoids the problem of Aerion's bloodline. The vote isn't close. The lords choose Aegon by overwhelming majority. Some out of genuine belief in his fitness to rule, others out of fear of what Maegor might become, still others because they see political advantage in supporting the winning side. The reasons vary, but the outcome is clear. Aegon the Unlikely, fourth son of a fourth son, becomes Aegon the Fifth, king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. Baby Maegor and his mother are quietly shuffled aside. They're not punished or exiled. They're simply made irrelevant, given a comfortable allowance and a minor residence far from court. The boy grows up knowing he was passed over for the throne, knowing his father's madness cost him a crown. What becomes of him is lost to history. Some accounts say he died young, others claim he lived a quiet life in obscurity. The records are deliberately vague, as if the realm decided the less said about Aerion's son, the better. The maesters who record these events for posterity struggle with how to characterize Aerion's life and death. They settle on clinical language that captures the facts while downplaying the horror. Prince Aerion Brightflame died in 232 AC after consuming Wildfire in the belief it would transform him. The madness of his final act, they write, demonstrates the dangers inherent in the Targaryen bloodline when unchecked by wisdom or restraint. Some chroniclers are less charitable. They call him Aerion the Monstrous, detailing his cruelties at Ashford and elsewhere. They describe him as example of everything wrong with royal privilege, a man enabled by his position to indulge delusions that would have been corrected in anyone of lesser birth. They wonder openly whether someone should have stopped him, whether his family failed in their duty by letting his madness progress unchallenged. Others take a more philosophical approach. They see Aerion as tragedy, not just monster, a man born into beliefs about Targaryen exceptionalism that he took too literally, too far. They question whether the constant reminder of dragon heritage does more harm than good, whether telling people they're special creates more problems than it solves. They suggest that Aerion's death might prompt needed reflection on how Targaryens see themselves. The small folk have their own version of the story. It spreads through taverns and market squares, growing more dramatic with each telling. The mad prince who drank dragon fire and burned from the inside. The Brightflame, who thought he was too special to die like normal men. It becomes a cautionary tale. Parents tell children about the dangers of pride and delusion, about what happens when you believe you're above natural law. King Aegon V never speaks publicly about his brother. He rules for 26 years, becoming one of the better Targaryen monarchs, beloved for his concern for common people and his attempts at reform. But those close to him report that he sometimes has nightmares about Aerion, about being a child again with hot coals hovering near his hands, about the brother who terrorized him, finding new and creative cruelties. Maester Aemon, serving at the wall by this time, offers perhaps the most insightful reflection in his private writings. He notes that Aerion was intelligent, possibly brilliant in his own twisted way. Under different circumstances, with different beliefs drilled into him, he might have been remarkable for good rather than notorious for horror. But the combination of cruel nature, enabling environment, and absolute belief in Targaryen supremacy created a perfect storm of madness. Aemon also writes something that won't be discovered until centuries later, when scholars examine his papers. He suggests that Aerion's death might have been, in some terrible way, merciful. If he had lived longer, if he had somehow gained real power, the suffering he could have inflicted on the realm would have dwarfed anything he managed as a prince. His death, horrible as it was, saved countless others from experiencing his particular brand of cruelty. The Alchemists' Guild tightens its security after Aerion's death. Access to Wildfire becomes more restricted. Questions about its properties are met with careful non-answers. They never want another prince coming to them with theories about transformation and immunity. The substance is dangerous enough when used as intended. Using it for delusional experiments is madness. They won't enable again. The political ramifications extend beyond just succession. Aerion's death and Maegor's disinheritance establish precedent that fitness matters more than strict birth order. This will influence future succession crises, giving lords legal framework for passing over unsuitable heirs. Its double-edged sword, potentially preventing mad kings, but also opening door to manipulation and political maneuvering. House Targaryen itself is changed by the incident. The easy assumption of exceptionalism, the casual belief in their special nature, becomes more complicated. Some Targaryens draw the wrong lesson, becoming even more obsessed with proving their difference from common humanity. But others, seeing where that path leads, embrace humility and connection to the realm they rule. The dragon skulls in the Red Keep's throne room take on new meaning after Aerion's death. They're not just monuments to vanished glory anymore. They're a reminder that even dragons die, that fire consumes everything eventually, that belief in immortality or invulnerability is always delusion. The courtiers who walk past them whisper about the prince who forgot that lesson. Years pass, decades. The immediate horror of Aerion's death fades into history, but the lesson remains. Every generation of Targaryens grows up hearing the story of Brightflame. The prince who tried to become a dragon and succeeded only in becoming ash. Some learn the right lessons, others don't. And in the depths of the Red Keep, in storage chambers no one visits anymore, there's a cup, gold covered in dragon motifs and Valyrian script, with green stains that never quite wash away. No one knows why it's been kept. Perhaps as evidence, perhaps as warning. Perhaps because throwing it away felt like trying to pretend none of it happened. The cup waits in darkness, artifact of madness and tragedy, silent witness to the moment when belief met reality, and reality won in the most terrible way imaginable. The years turn to decades, and decades to centuries. Targaryen Brightflame becomes legend, then cautionary tale, then footnote in the vast and bloody history of House Targaryen. But his shadow stretches forward through time in ways he never could have imagined. His great-great-nephew, another Aerys, will sit the Iron Throne centuries later and develop his own obsession with fire. This one will whisper about burning them all, will cache wildfire beneath King's Landing, will see enemies everywhere, and flame as the solution to every problem. The Mad King Aerys II isn't identical to Aerion, but the patterns echo, the same bloodline, the same fascination with fire, the same certainty that Targaryens are above normal human limitations. And there's bitter irony in what happens after the Mad King falls. His daughter Daenerys walks into a funeral pyre and emerges unburned, holding 3 newly hatched dragons. She does what Aerion dreamed of, but could never achieve. She survives fire and brings dragons back to the world. The difference is, she doesn't seek it out of madness or cruelty. It happens to her as magic returns to the world, as ancient forces awaken, as destiny moves in ways no one can predict or control. Would Aerion have felt vindicated if he'd known? Would he claim his beliefs were right, just mistimed? Or would he understand that what happened to Daenerys was unique, unrepeatable, nothing to do with bloodline superiority or willful transformation? We'll never know. He's centuries dead by then, his bones long since turned to dust. The lesson his life teaches gets relearned by every generation. Power without wisdom is dangerous. Belief without doubt leads to disaster. Cruelty justified by claims of superiority creates only suffering. Simple truths endlessly forgotten, endlessly rediscovered at terrible cost. Think about what could have been different if a Targaryen had been born into a different family. Without the constant reinforcement of Targaryen exceptionalism, would his cruelty have found such elaborate justification? If someone had challenged his beliefs early and effectively, could he have been reached before the delusion became complete? If he'd lived in an era with different understanding of mental illness, might he have received help instead of enablement? These questions have no answers, only speculation. What happened? Happened. A prince drank wildfire and died in agony. A baby was denied a throne because of his father's madness. A family line was marked by horror that took generations to fade. The past can't be changed, only understood. Standing here at the end of his story, we see a man who was many things, intelligent but lacking wisdom, powerful but fundamentally weak, beautiful on the outside, but corrupted within. He believed he was special, and in some ways he was, just not in the ways he thought. He was special in his capacity for cruelty, in his complete lack of empathy, in the totality of his delusion. The Red Keep still stands, those same red stones that witnessed his birth and death. The Iron Throne remains, uncomfortable seat of uncomfortable power, reminding everyone who sits there that ruling requires more than blood and birthright. It requires the wisdom to know your own limitations, the humility to accept that you're human despite your heritage, the courage to reject the lies that privilege whispers in your ear. Aerion never learned those lessons. Perhaps he couldn't. Perhaps his mind was broken from the start. twisted by something in his nature that no amount of good parenting or wise counsel could have fixed. Or perhaps he was created by his circumstances, molded by a culture that told him he was special until he believed it absolutely and fatally. The truth probably lies somewhere between those extremes, as truth usually does, nature and nurture working together, each reinforcing the other, creating a perfect storm of madness that could only end one way. His name lives on in whispers and warnings. When a young Targaryen shows signs of cruelty or obsession, someone will mention Brightflame. When discussions turn to the dangers of believing your own propaganda about royal blood, Aerion becomes the example. When maesters teach about the importance of recognizing mental illness and intervening before it's too late, his case study appears in their texts. This is his legacy, then, not transformation or transcendence, not proof of Targaryen superiority or draconic destiny. Just a warning written in fire and pain, a reminder that we're all human, all mortal, all subject to the same physical laws regardless of our last names or the color of our eyes. The night deepens over Westeros, as it has for thousands of years. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to human drama, to the rise and fall of houses, to the delusions and dreams that drive men to madness. Somewhere in the Red Keep's depths, in forgotten storage rooms, that golden cup still waits. Its green stains have faded, but never quite disappeared, a permanent reminder of the moment when belief met reality. In the throne room, the dragon skulls watch over empty space. The last dragons are long gone, victims of time and the dance and the slow fading of magic from the world. Their monuments now, nothing more. Proof that even the mightiest creatures eventually fall, that fire eventually dies, that everything ends. Aerion wanted to escape that fate. He wanted to transcend mortality, to become something eternal and powerful and beyond the reach of death. Instead, he achieved the opposite. He died young, horribly, pointlessly. He left no mark except as cautionary tale. He proved only that delusion has a price, and that price is paid in full. The realm moves on, as realms always do. New kings take the throne, new crises emerge and are resolved or aren't. New stories unfold, some tragic, some triumphant, most a mixture of both. Life continues in all its messy complexity, indifferent to the lessons history tries to teach. But sometimes, late at night when the Red Keep sleeps, servants swear they can smell something sharp and chemical, a scent that makes their eyes water. They claim to see green light flickering under doors that should be dark. They hear whispers in High Valyrian, words about fire and transformation and destiny. These are just stories, of course, ghost tales to frighten new servants and entertain old ones. The dead don't walk in Westeros, don't leave traces of their obsessions lingering in stone corridors. Aerion is gone, truly gone as anyone can be. His body burned on a pyre, his soul went wherever souls go. His story ended. But endings are complicated things. A life leaves ripples that spread through time, touching people who never knew the person, influencing events decades or centuries removed from the original cause. Targaryen's ripples are still spreading, will continue spreading, as long as people remember his name and the terrible way he died. Perhaps that's the final irony. He wanted immortality through transformation, wanted to become something legendary, and in a way he succeeded. People remember Aerion Brightflame. They tell his story. They use his name as a warning. He achieved a kind of immortality, just not the glorious kind he imagined. The immortality of the cautionary tale. The eternal life of a bad example. The legend of the prince who loved fire so much it killed him. As dawn breaks over King's Landing, light spills across the city like liquid gold. Fishermen head to their boats. Bakers fire their ovens, The city wakes and goes about its business. Thousands of people living their lives, pursuing their dreams, facing their challenges. Most have never heard of Aerion Targaryen. Of those who have, most don't think about him. Life is for the living. The dead have their place in history, but they don't rule the present. New stories are being written every day. New choices made, new paths chosen. Some will lead to glory, others to disaster, most to something unremarkable in between. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the Red Keep where history sleeps, the cup waits, silent, empty, stained with green, that never quite fades. A reminder that fire consumes everything it touches, that belief without wisdom leads only to ash, that the brightest flames burn out the fastest and leave only darkness behind. The story of Aerion Brightflame is complete. The mad prince who thought he was a dragon learned in his final agonizing moments that he was only ever a man, and men, no matter their bloodline or their beliefs or their certainty, are all equally mortal in the end. The wheel keeps turning, the seasons change, kings rise and fall, and the dragons, those magnificent creatures that started all of this, sleep in the realm of legend and memory, waiting for the day when magic returns to the world and fire takes wing once more. But that's another story, for another night, for another time. For now, let the story of Brightflame rest. Let it serve its purpose as warning and reminder. Let it echo through time, as testament to the dangers of believing you're more than human, more than mortal, more than the limitations that bind us all. And let us remember, as we drift towards sleep, that the greatest wisdom is knowing what we don't know. The deepest strength is admitting our weakness, and the truest nobility comes not from blood or birth, but from choosing every day to be better than our worst impulses. Aerion never learned these lessons. Perhaps we can learn them for him. Perhaps that's the only way to redeem his wasted life, his pointless death, his legacy of pain and horror. By being wiser than he was, by being kinder than he was, by being more human than he ever allowed himself to be. The night is quiet now. The tale is told. The fire has burned down to embers and ash. And in that peaceful darkness, we can finally rest, carrying with us the knowledge that every story, no matter how dark, eventually comes to an end. Sleep well, dream of better things than fire and transformation. And remember that being human, with all its limitations and mortality, is not a curse to escape but a gift to embrace. The story of Aerion Brightflame, the prince who drank wildfire to become a dragon, is finished. May we all learn from his mistakes. May none of us repeat them, and may the fire that consumed him serve as light to guide others away from the same darkness. Good night.